you, the Messiah. No offense, Perdre, but that has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Why not me?
Have you met yourself? Perdre, you drink, you fight, you like to break people's arms just to hear the sounds they make.
Howdy, pilgrims, and thanks for tuning in to Season 3 of Preacher vs. Preacher. It's a comparison companion where each week we get together and not only recap AMC's series, Preacher, but we directly compare it to the 90s comic it's based on by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Now, I'm Bill Sweeney, and my buddy Dom is off this week, but I got my good friend and previous PvP guest, Agent Palmer. He's here. You might know me from the Wicked Theory podcast, and you should know him from agentpalmer.com. Say hello to the people, buddy.
Howdy, pilgrims. You should also know me from the chat room if you are live with the boys every Saturday night, or most Saturday nights on the Wicked Theory podcast.
Wow, you are... I should pay you for that smooth promotion that you just gave us. But he's right. So, yeah, Dom's got the week off. Pulled in our first guest for this season, Palmer, who's... we go way back. You've heard his name. He's a legend of sorts.
Infamous, if anything.
That means more than famous, if I remember from the Three Amigos.
Yes,
correctly.
Definitely more than famous.
More than famous. So before we get into the show itself, let's break it down, do some official business real quick. Just reminders, we're on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play Music, blah, 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 blah. Search for us on your podcast player of choice. Subscribe, rate, review, if that's what you like to do. Twitter handles, I'm at Wicked Theory. Agent Palmer is at Agent Palmer.
There you go.
This podcast is at Preach vs. Preach on Twitter. You can email this show at pvp@wickedtheory.com. Let's see what else we got.
We want your grandma stories.
That's true. That is true.
Well, I don't, but they do.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yeah, if you got grandma stories, the season's focusing on a crazy grandma. And I don't know, somebody out there, at least one, nobody wants to share, it seems. I think people may be a little nervous.
So it just takes the one to break the glass.
Right. Because you can't tell me no one's got a grandma who did something crazy one day. It doesn't mean she has to be evil. You know what I mean? Just she did something nutty one day. Like I said last time, maybe she mushed somebody's face into a cake. I don't know. Maybe she let the dogs loose on the neighbor one day.
Yeah, you don't need a grandma who compares to this grandma. Just...
Right. She doesn't have to be this level, Although this grandma, we haven't seen exactly how evil she is quite yet. But we'll get into that. Getting ahead of myself. So yeah, send us your grandma stories. Send them to the email pvp@wickedtheory.com. Sign it with your Twitter handle if you want, or if it's a grandma story, you can send it and tag it. Hey, just keep it anonymous, and we'll read it in case you're worried that your grandma, for some reason, might be listening to this specific podcast one day. As if that would ever happen, but.
And if you happen to be a grandmother and are listening, please let us know, because we would be interested if we get that demographic.
How about that, too? If you are the grandma and you did something crazy once,
there it is.
Send us that story. That counts. You can do that. I think that falls within the parameters. All right, so before we get into it, just a quick reminder, last thing. This show is ad-free, and that's made possible by generous support of listeners just like you, who've gone and considered, maybe you would consider helping out over at patreon.com/wickedtheory. You can support the show for as little as $1 a month. There's other tiers available, but you don't got to kill yourself. The little bits add up, and they count too, and they count just as much as anything else. And we really appreciate it, even if you just take the time to go over there and look. But check it out for us, maybe. Patreon.com/wickedtheory. All right. So this is season 3. This is the point where we get into the spoiler warnings. Just a reminder for people who maybe haven't heard us. What we really do is we work from the principle of you've read the books, you know them, you love them, you know nothing is perfect. But hey, our thing here is that as we recap the episode, we theorize along the way about the differences from the book to the show, maybe about why they were made, or an hour theorizing, and how we think and feel about those changes, and that kind of thing. We also maybe talk about where the show is going and may go next. So hopefully you've read the books, because just because you're up to book 2 or 3 with this particular storyline doesn't mean we may not give something down the line away. And I know that for some people, because I've been in the Reddit for Preacher, that there are always people kind of coming in new to the show, catching up, and they're like, oh, well, where do I start, or what do I do? Look, if this is your first time listening to this show, and according to Stan Lee, every issue of a book or episode of a show is somebody's first. Go pick up some Preacher graphic novels. They're really cheap on Amazon. So with that, if anybody wants to know, the one thing we do once in a while is we hit a bell. I don't know if you can hear that. Palmer, you heard that?
I did.
You did? Was it crystal clear for you? Do we need to do it again, just in case?
It sounds really good.
Fantastic. All right, are you ready, sir? Because that bell means that we're going to... That's the book bell. That's like if something from the book actually is there, like in force, in full.
Well, then...
Not just...
yeah, let's do it up.
Slight. All right, good. All right, so here we go. Season 3, Episode 3, Gonna Hurt is the title of this one.
Ouch.
Yeah, so just before we get into it, I'm just going to say my notes are a little lighter this week than they have been in previous weeks. So, I don't know. Maybe this one will be a little bit less specific. That's how I say that word. So I just give up on it as soon as it starts coming out. I know I'm going to ruin it.
Yeah.
Less specific. Okay. So this one starts out with Tulip. She's driving. She basically heads to Grail headquarters. She gets there. There's nobody there. They're already gone. All she finds is some business cards, but she's already got one. So she just throws them. But that she turns around and heads right back to Angelville.
Yeah, she was a lot more excited to get there than she was to return home. I mean...
Well, she was on a mission when she was heading there, so she had some ass kicking in mind, and she loves to do that. So I kind of get it, But she was kind of like on a mission to fix this for Jessie, because she goofed up last episode. So I guess that's kind of what she was going to do. She was going to, I guess, put a gun in someone's face and be like, leave my man alone. I'm not sure. But what ends up happening is that she bumps into God on the highway, who's riding a motorcycle, still in the dog suit. He's got a blonde with him. And what we get is the continuation of the second half of a conversation she has with God in the book that they didn't show us last week. That last week we were like talking about on this show, like, oh man, like, we went into it in detail. I actually read out from the book this passage and stuff like that, and for all intents and purposes, we got it here. What did you think about that? Were you surprised to actually see that happen? Because I was a little bit.
I was extremely surprised because I expected that was done and gone, to be fair. Like, we kept, for her in that one episode to keep going back to remember different parts of it, I expected that to just bleed through the rest of the season. And like every couple episodes, she'd remember a little bit more and more of that conversation. Right. Despite the fact that we didn't see that much conversation.
I expected a similar thing where it would slowly unroll her memory, right?
But to go completely, I guess to go completely full book almost here was a surprise. And then you get to the point where I literally forgot Jessie was on a mission from God. Or not from God. This isn't Blues Brothers. I literally forgot Jessie was on a mission to get God because it's been so long since he's been on that mission that my first inclination when this happened and she's like, well, I'm going to find God. I was like, that's supposed to be Jessie's. And then it's not until later in the show, in the episode, where Jessie's like, well, I'm looking for him too. And I was like, oh, that's right. They did. Oh, okay. They've changed so much. It's hard to keep track of what is and what isn't.
There's that, and also too, like in the book, you're kind of regularly reminded. It's almost a mantra of the book, the mission to find God. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's reasons for it to come up in the dialogue every once in a while. You know what I mean? And maybe it's actually exposition squeezed in there in case, like I was saying before, like it's somebody's first issue or something. But it seems like it always comes up in the conversation or something. It's the show that lets that kind of fall out of the conversation in a way. But I feel like maybe they think that, like, if he was saying it as often as he's saying it in the book, it would probably be the thing we goofed on, maybe, or
So
it might get annoying.
Be a
but
drinking game.
Still. Yeah, right, exactly. It would be a drinking game. Like, how many times will they say it this week? But I think, they did let the specific, reminder of the mission kind of fall to the wayside a little bit. But that's what's interesting, I feel like, about the scene, too, is that, like, even in that, see, last night, I actually watched the episode with Edward O'Hare, co-host of the DC TV report.
Wait. With him?
Physically in the same space.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it went well. We even compared notes, but I only mean like I held up my pad and he held up his pad.
Oh, you held up your sheet and he held up his novel?
It was very much, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. But no, we had about the same amount of lines on our legal pads. I have a feeling his was A, more legible, and B, made more sense, besides being color coded, because I shit you not, he had at least 5 highlighters with him. We only needed 3 because this episode only had like 3 storylines going on.
Yeah, if anybody really wants to, at DC TV Report, or what is it, DCTV at wickedtheory.com, ask for Ed to share a picture of his notes on one of the older episodes where he's almost run out of colors.
Well, on his Twitter account, Edward O'Hare TBD, he might have a picture of one of them from the past. I think he might have. I feel like he sent me one, but he might have posted it too. But my point being that, so me and him were watching it, and so it was. I had to pick and choose what I was going to, because he hasn't read the books, so I had to pick and choose what to allude to. But if anybody wants to listen to somebody else talk about the show besides us, you can always check out the DC TV report. And I'm really only kind of recapping that show right now because there's nothing else on that falls under their umbrella. They are doing some retro picks with a Batman the Animated Series. You can check out that too.
I will say, for those of you who have never checked out the DC TV report, Preacher, when they cover it, is a complete role reversal. Normally, Sarah's like, so, Ed, what happened in the comics? But for Preacher, it's Ed asking Sarah.
Right. Dr. Sarah Netsley, freelance writer for Entertainment Weekly, EW.com. So you should check them out on a regular basis if you follow any of the DC TV stuff. But that's not why I even brought up Ed, and I lost track of why I even brought up Ed.
Because you were watching it with him.
Yeah, but there was, I think I had a story or something. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Well, I completely derailed you and interrupted, just like Jody came in and interrupted.
Don't try that hard to segue it. But I will say that we should get back on track.
That's where we were. I'm just, I brought it back.
Fair enough. Well, here's the thing. The big line that we were very happy to see that we didn't get last week was God getting angry at Tulip because Tulip called him on his bullshit. And although that part goes down a little bit different, it's kind of what happens in the book. Tulip does call him on his bullshit, and, he gets pissed off, and he says, Tulip O'Hare, I'm a loving God, but don't push it. And for that, we get the bell fucking, because that was great. And so we got a big laugh out of that one. So with that, we end up Cassidy and TC hanging out.
That's a sitcom waiting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much drug use that show, TC and Cass, or Cass and TC, there may not be enough fake drugs in the world to make that show. But So they're going through. He's huffing something, and he's like, "Oh, what's in here? This?" And he's like, "No, what, is it? Is it this?" He's like, "No, hemlock." And he's like, "Oh, hemlock." He's like, "Been a long time since I." It's like brimstone. I haven't smelled brimstone in hundreds of years. I have very limber in my notes.
Oh, okay. So, aside from trying to guess what is in this mystical swamp gas, Cassidy is telling stories about healing up, and like, oh, you think this wound's nothing? I once got chainsawed in half by a woman because her husband was blowing me, and all this stuff, and TC's trying to figure out like, how are you still alive? And that is when Cassidy goes, "I'm very limber, Pilates," and he just starts, trying to cover his
TC
tracks.
buys it. Right. This kind of starts to set in play the fact that TC's kind of figuring it out, or he figures it out by the end. Pardon me, I suppressed a belch. Jessie and Tulip. So this is the part where, that's the thing that I broke down to Ed, was that like how God does tell Tulip specifically as we watch, tell Jessie to stop fucking trying to find me. In the show, like when we came out of that scene, I had looked at Ed and I'm like, do we even know what he wants her to do exactly? And Ed was like, no, not really. But then when she sees Jessie, she kind of, seems to have it figured out. Because that's exactly what she says verbatim. She's like, I think he just wants you to stop following him. You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, we get that. And that kind of completes the broken up kind of thing that happens in the book, and like, in a 2-page spread. They give their personality to it. So that's basically all that happens right there. She's like, I'll kick God in his balls. I don't give a shit. Which is, sounds about right for this show.
All right, I got to stop.
Yeah, pull in.
The Tulip that is aggressively going after God, in her mind at least, after he drives off, right? And the Tulip that's talking to Jessie, a little bit more confident, despite all of the O'Hare curse that they allude to. I feel like we're getting her a little bit closer back to the book. Confident Tulip.
Well, she's always been confident here. I think what the nuance is that she's not like as impulsive. She's not as like overly sassy to the point where like, she's just like, a little bit annoying. She's just kind of straightforward and to the point, as opposed to trying to like overdo it with personality. Kind of thing, like, you know what I mean?
It feels
I think that
a little more.
That does. Go ahead. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels a little more book right now.
Yeah, it definitely feels a little bit more book right now. It seems like they kind of dialed her back, and I think that kind of started last season too, at some point. But maybe coming back from the dead took the wind out of her sails a little bit, which was something that I was hoping for last year, thinking that it could be an opportunity to kind of course correct her a little bit, to give her a reason to maybe not be so rambunctious. And this kind of follows a little bit through with this overall theory, and there's some shades of it later on here too that I've had forever, that they want to slow roll the introduction of just about every element and aspect of the show. Like everything kind of has to be earned in a way. Like, okay, so but we'll get back to it. I'll show you what I mean. But like the fact that like Tulip's got her shit together, like from Jump Street in the book, more or less, is a thing like we'll end up at. You know what I mean?
As opposed to we're putting it together right now.
Right. Like to jump ahead a little bit, just slightly. Like this whole trying to rekindle the Jessie Cassidy best friendship, like I feel like that's strained, and that's something we're gonna have to still get to. Like their buddiness has always kind of felt kind of rushed and forced a little bit. You know what I mean? And in particular, this week, it was kind of like thrown in as a thing of just Jesse trying to get his point across. And so he was kind of like, come on, you're my best friend. You know that. And even Cass is like, really? Like, we are?
Yeah, you've never said that.
Yeah, it's like, what are you, crazy? So he sees it like right through for bullshit. And it's something Dom had messaged me. He's like, what do you think about that whole thing? And I'm just kind of thinking, for them to kind of pull out the whole me and Tulip had sex card so early and to leave that as a thing that will linger on hanging over them forever. It's the kind of thing that you would think in real life would keep two people from ever becoming best friends if they're going to run around as a trio.
Well, all right, so this is what I'll say. There's a part of me that thinks they're forcing the love triangle a little too much. And to go a little bit forward in this episode, because you need it for the payoff, with Cassidy going to visit grandma, and saying, I'm looking for a love spell.
Right.
I feel like that's literally a counterbalance to this love triangle to Jesse saying, Cassidy, you're my best friend. I feel like those two if you pull out one, you have to pull out the other, and somehow that's how we ended up with both of those things in this episode, because otherwise one of them doesn't make sense.
Right. I feel like it's the thing where like they kind of want to show Cassidy's like maybe like his desperation in this situation. And I feel like though my hope is, because I see comedy coming where Cassidy, that love potion thing may not work out. Because think about if that gets sprayed, because it's a spray. Like there's a reason for some reason for it to be a spray. Like I think like there's a built-in story point that's like no. But if we make it a spray, then he can do this with it, and all of a sudden TC's in love with him, or the goat's in love with him.
You went a completely different direction than I did. I was just expecting that.
They're gonna spray Tulip with it, and then like we'll have to deal with that for like 5 episodes.
No, I was just expecting that the love potion would replace the drugging from towards the end of the comics.
Right, it would be this fucked up way, and you never know. They might long play it, because not for nothing. Did you saw Breaking Bad, right?
No.
No. Okay, so let's just leave it like this. There's a thing with a poison early on in Breaking Bad that kind of like looks like he's going to use it on somebody, and it gets put to the side, and you forget about it for a while. Then all of a sudden it pops up again. So they could be doing a long play with this kind of a thing. I could see it coming into play, and but we don't know like the specifics of how it works exactly. Like if anybody sprays it on anybody, will they only fall in love with Cassidy, or is it like you spray it and the first person they're looking at, that's who they, you know what I mean? We don't know the full, because they played coy with it and they left the room, and we don't know how the rest of that deal went down either. We don't know like what Cassidy might have promised her in return. Yeah. Because for a vampire to promise his soul is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think though that it would be the smart long play, because it. Whenever they decide to go down that road, it makes it a lot easier for them than having to string out both of them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, too. It's like they have some options here that are, I think, just not the straight obvious, because I think the knee-jerk initial thing that they expect most people to think is like, oh, he's going to end up using it on her. And I feel like it won't be that easy. Like something will happen with it at some level, and it'll be either hijinks, or it'll be like a save the day, like, he'll spray it on Hoover, like, or something, and it'll be something weird. All right, so we did jump past that Jesse is going to the church with Jody. We don't know why initially, but he's taken off, and he's telling Tulip, stay away from TC. Stay away from everybody. You and Cass, stay in the house. And even with Cassidy, when he finished up the best, well, actually, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. So Tulip ends up with TC anyway.
Yes.
Like soon as Jesse leaves the room, and they have a brief exchange, but basically it comes down to TC offers to show his dingle, And I didn't think we were actually going to get a dingle. I thought they were going to do a misdirect. And it was going to be like some other thing, like, this is my dingle. And it's like some fly fishing lures or something, like, you know. But we come back to that later. So Jesse's upstairs. The whole "you're my best friend" bit. Jesse ends up stabbing Cass because they're figuring it out. Like, we have to make it look like you don't heal that fast.
I will say that scene produces two of my favorite moments so far this season. One, I'm as a sucker for like classic animation. Jesse's line of like, "You've seen the pictures hanging around here," and that, and Cassidy looking at that one poster, that one like piece of art, and then it animating the whole like sun coming up and burning.
Right.
Loved it. Perfect. But the other part of it was Voodoo Disneyland. I should be their main attraction.
Right. You would, perfect. You know what I mean?
And foreshadowing. That's what he becomes.
Right. Well, that's the looming threat at the end of the episode, and they conveniently actually like telegraph the kick to add to your memory. So Jesse stabs Cassidy to keep up appearances, and then basically Tulip now has wanders into Grandma's room and is snooping around. She finds a couple of things, but basically I think she finds an urn with some Swedish fish, I think is what that was, that she ate.
No, I think those were peppers. Peppers,
maybe? Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. I was like, maybe it was like an old Swedish fish. That's kind of like what the shape was to me.
She'd still be chewing it in episode 7.
Well, I feel like the same thing too. When Cassidy ate those peppers, he might have been eating them slow, but I feel like a pepper. If we're going to time the length of chewing, I think a pepper and a Swedish fish are roughly the same. But let's not get into that. That's a different podcast.
Yes.
One of the most different podcasts of all. So she's snooping around. She finds a phone. She picks it up. It's a direct line, and they're like, "Who is this?" So I'll ask you now. Do you think that's a phone to heaven or hell?
Oh, see that? You know what? It's a coin flip, right? Like,
were you even thinking that at all?
My gut says, with more time to think, it could be hell. But my initial reaction was that's heaven, because the panic, right? Like, so I go back to season 1 when they first found out God was missing. When Jesse really calls them on it with the phone, like, they just panic. And there was so much panic, like, that I just figure anybody picking up the phone up in heaven is going to be panicked. Meanwhile, hell, which I'm sure we will get to eventually this season, I feel like they kind of still got everything under control. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Of the two places, right? Which one is running a little better? Yeah, for me, it was like, at first it was like, oh, it's a heaven phone. But then, like, when I was thinking about it later today at work, I was like, oh, well, not to give away the preview, but we'll get to it. We know hell is coming at some point. Maybe it was hell. Like, we've seen heaven phone. Like, we've seen a direct line to heaven. So I'm just saying, I think it's in there in the mix. But anyway, she finds the blood rags, and I was wondering, I couldn't remember exactly if is Cassidy fully in the loop actually when he goes to Grandma about the blood rag, about the blood oath and how that actually worked, because I know he was to the side, but I don't know if when Jesse comes in and does the whole initial conversation with Grandma and gives her the blood, if he's right there and sees it.
He's not right there. I think he's still on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's one of those conveniently, like he's not completely in the loop, and that's why he, like, because I know he's not there when Grandma starts wringing it out and he starts choking. Or maybe he is there for that.
No. That's the end of the episode. That's just him and Tulip out there at the site of the shattered glass and the remaining Escalades.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right, so product placement. I got you. So with that, So the blood rags, and then she runs into TC. How about that dingle? Then we go to the church, and we're at a Huffers Anonymous meeting, which was an interesting spin on things. Because the whole time I'm like, oh, the pamphlet says HA. What is it? What is it? And like, you can feel that they're building to the reveal of it when this guy's talking. Like, it's gonna be the thing. What is he actually hooked on? What is he actually? You know what I mean? And he's like, glue, man. I just need glue. Which is funny. Which is kind of funny. But the most interesting thing is that when Jesse's trying to goad that guy, because obviously now we've realized, oh, he's trying to get people to come back to Angelville. He's trying to drum up some souls, some business. That guy only got excited about the idea of the tombs coming back.
What are those?
And he's like, you're telling me the tombs are back? And he's like, no. He's like, all right, then I don't give a shit.
Now here's the question. At that moment, Bill, what did you think the tombs were?
I still had no idea. Like at that point, I'm like, I think it's just a place where you're keeping people. So I was thinking, did they just let people go down there and kill? Maybe was kind of what I was thinking. It was just like, we'll let you go down there and like, here's a guy who's all chained up, poke him with a stick, like, you know what I mean? Or like, we'll let you torture people and shit or something like that.
For some reason, my brain immediately went to the sex detectives.
Well, I did think something naughty. I'm like, at first I was like, did they let people go down there and fuck them? And I was like, no, I bet you that other guy's got an eye missing and all this shit, because I pictured them doing a thing where it's like that, like pay to come down here and you can poke people. Had no idea, basically, we would get Swamp Fight Club, but we'll get to that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We do learn a little bit about Jesse, though, as he's trying to recruit him.
Okay.
He's like, everything. Like, glue. Like, he's got a list of things.
Yeah, but I don't really buy any of that. I think a lot of that, that whole spiel was all talk. Don't get me wrong. I think he's gotten high on shit. I mean, he was smoking weed one episode, and he's probably dabbled and stuff. But him having like a hardcore, Huff history, I don't think so.
So I don't remember. I don't know if it's in your notes, but he comes back to the truck, unsuccessful, and he tries to convince Jody, like, come on, let's get out of here. Like, let's you don't have to work for her anymore.
Yeah, or just get me out. Right.
Something. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, nah, it's not going to be that easy. And then he's like, we still have the Gamblers Anonymous meeting, the this, that, and the other thing. Like, clearly they know they know they're easy targets. Right.
And so, then they're not done for the day by a long shot, but Jesse's like, do it for Christina. And that sets Jody off. So that's a thing that's not from the book. So they're kind of painting this thing where, like, Jody had a thing for his mother. Whether or not anything ever happened, he definitely had something for her, and Jesse's known about it the whole time. So that was him trying to play on it a little bit, like, I'll do it for my mom. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so Jody's like, elbows him in the face, and he's like, don't even bring her up, or something like that. So it was interesting to see that little sprinkle of, how they're trying to spread these people out a little bit, fill them up more. So, because, we kind of fessed up to it last week, where it's like, look, like in the book, when you catch up to these Grandma and TC and Jody, you don't get a lot about them, like what they do day to day or what their lives are like. So the show is filling that out and bringing a little life to it. And those elements all feel perfectly fine within developing them as individuals. But it's obvious that this show is going to try and introduce them and have us really kind of like, the more we get to know them, the more we'll grow to hate them. So that when they finally do get offed and killed, I think they're trying to build it to that kind of a satisfaction thing. Because it's like, oh, you're going to kind of like TC a little bit until you find out just how perverted he really is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because as much as, like, Seth Rogen likes to be like, hey, that chicken, hey, that chicken, Like, you still haven't seen him do anything with the chicken, really. It's all kind of vaguely hinted at.
Well, that's where we're going next, right? Because the next scene is Tulip and TC and his dingle.
Well, his dingle. And he's literally showing her his penis. But she's just doing it because in the end, it's going to be a thing where it's going to put his guard down, and she can just try and ply him for information, maybe even to get him to do stuff. So she tries to get more info about how the blood contract works. So he starts telling a story about how...
Well, hold on. Before he tells the story, she presses him for, like, what is it? And TC, in his most probably eloquent line of the season, just says, a solemn exchange of promises between parties. Like, almost like, how come you didn't learn that in kindergarten?
Right, like, don't you understand? He's giving dictionary answers out of nowhere. But yeah, he starts telling the story, and one of the fun things they do with the flashback is they do it all in black and white, and it's shot and acted out as it goes, more and more so, even though it's short, like a B movie from the 50s, like a schlocky horror movie, just before the turn of black and white to color kind of era, and very well done, very funny, and I liked mostly that, like, as short as the scene is, it doesn't feel like that when it first starts. But as it goes, by the time you get to, like, the last couple of beats of that little story, like, it goes full B movie, like, So I thought that was funny. Or like a Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side or something,
Yep.
like, you know what I mean? Because, like,
Absolutely.
she makes the deal, and then, like, the husband gets it back, and then he rips it in half. But when he turns around, his wife is ripped in half. Ooh, twist. You know what I mean? Like, it's a old school, like, kind of thing, like, old school storytelling, some O. Henry type thing,
I'm with you. I thought that was, if we get more story time with TC and it's like this, and we're gonna give it the full B movie treatment, sign me up for an episode for the rest of the season.
Story time with TC. It's a podcast coming soon. So we get that, and then basically we jump to a scene with Cassidy and Grandma, and this is the love spell thing, and it's basically like a big they, like I said before, they conveniently don't show us exactly how it goes down.
We don't even know if it did, to be fair.
Say that again?
We don't even know if it went down. We just know he asked for it.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Punch her in the mouth and take it?
No, I'm just saying, like, we don't know if she actually went through the process of giving him anything.
Well, that's true. I mean, we don't know that it really is the love potion he asked for. I mean, it could be something else, I guess. I mean, if we're going to play it straight, I mean, based on what we saw, we're supposed to presume it's the love potion, but it could be something else.
Yeah.
They could be pulling a slick move like that. So then with that, Tulip goes to the Boyds. Well, she starts heading there anyway. Jessie and Grandma talking about the tombs. And
Grandma, always willing to jab a needle in, was like, Irish came to see me.
Right.
And doesn't all she says is you know how those Irish are. They like to talk.
Right.
And it's like,
don't worry about it. It's all right. So she's letting everything get all stirred up and machinationed. And so one of the things that Dom he was concerned with was that, like, it seems like, or it's possible that, like, Grandma is going to help set up this divide between the group where, like, once she sees for sure how much Tulip and Cassidy can be used to pull Tulip out of here, drive the wedge kind of thing. At least that's Grandma, might be a motivation soon, or even currently for Grandma, to allow wedges to get driven between them so she can end up keeping Jessie there all the more likely. Like, you know what I mean? Or making it easier for her to manipulate Jessie to stay. this kind of a thing is possible. Although I did kind of take the moment to remind him, I'm like, well, we're supposed to get, Jesus Assad, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Or no. The Infants.
The vampires.
Yeah, the vampire clan thing this season at some point. So I do feel like Cassidy may go off on his own. Which, again, following my whole theory of they kind of sort of give us everything, would put the storyline for Tulip and Jessie, if the two of them stay, right where the book is, when everything goes to shit. Because when everything goes to shit at Grandma's house, well, the whole storyline at Grandma's house is just those two. Cassidy's already off doing his own thing. And so it's just them two at Grandma's. But if this story ends where, Cassidy goes because they have some big fight or whatever, or some storyline drifts him away, maybe those two are the only ones there when it's like, it's time for retribution and let's kill them all.
So here's a book question for you, because well, let's set it up. So Tulip goes to the Boyds and kind of gets herself trapped, because Madame Boyd knows she's lying about who she is. She knows who she really is. Do you think, with all this voodoo stuff, there's only one part of voodoo in the book? Do you think we're going to get the snake during this season while we're down here?
I feel like the whole thing with that could be a season 4 moment, or because I feel like the end of season 3 is spoiler, is the grandma in the house burning to the ground and Grandma launching out of the house like a rocket.
Okay.
Because if you tell me that they don't do the Grandma rocket,
well, I'm just saying, because
you know what I mean.
Voodoo that was the only voodoo. Like, Grandma wasn't voodoo in the books, or we don't know what she was, but at least it wasn't played off that way. And the only thing I remember about the voodoo is being in the swamp and Jessie. It's I don't even think
it was
it's
a different
cover.
Group of it's a different group of characters they run into once Cassidy runs into some old friends. So don't get me wrong, to transfer it over here and then streamline the storylines overall and maybe not have them stop there and find some other way to fold in Cassidy's past coming to haunt him with those people or whatever. Still possible. But I think it ties into those vampires, though, where it's it's all part of his last time in Louisiana or someplace near, because it happens after that. Because it happens after this. That's the Dixie Fried storyline.
Yeah,
but you're right, though. Since it's voodoo here now, it makes perfect sense that they might do a similar thing. But the ultimate goal with that particular event was that he was trying to commune with Genesis itself, and I think there's LSD and some music and some bongos. They're in a graveyard.
Yeah, I think there was some. I think the snake venom too. I think was part of it as well. But the only reason I feel like they could easily pull that in is because there might come a time when he gets Genesis back where he's gonna have to do something on that grand scale, and we know from a production standpoint that they're staying in one place each time. So if the writers are going at it all right, this is our one chance in the swamp with voodoo. Okay, let's.
Fair enough, right? If they're doing location a season type thing, I get what you're saying. This is going to be, we're basically 2 seasons within Louisiana right now.
Yeah.
Give or take how close we are to Texas now, but still. So I get what you're saying. It would fall in here somewhere to make things easy. Yeah.
So
where are we in the story?
No, where Tulip just got kidnapped. If you want to go back to the thing, I just feel like Tulip way underestimated Madame Boyd.
Oh yeah. And that was the thing that came to my head kind of quickly as soon as we met that lady. And then as soon as I saw like it was a dead body or a mannequin, I'm like, okay, definitely this other lady is the actual Madame Boyd, you know. We jumped over that Cassidy gets caught.
No, that happens next. I thought.
Well, fair enough. Well, either way, we're talking about it now. Cassidy gets caught by TC. Cassidy's like wolfing down a chicken. It might be one of TC's favorites. Who knows? And so they knock him out and they string him up. And then basically the plan is that he's going to hang there until morning, and Jesse's there now, I think, or he comes up on the scene.
Jesse comes up on the scene, and they're like, "Did you know your best friend was a vampire?"
And he's like, "No, I didn't know that at all. I did not know." But he's like, "But I got a better idea," which, again, much like last week, is Jesse trying to figure out a way to flip this around, get a chance to get something going where, you know, Cassidy can save himself. But we jump back, Tulip at Madame Boyd's real quick to finish up that thing. Then Jesse, we jump back, and now we're in the tombs. And it looks like Jesse kind of, I guess, slipping back into his old kind of fucking mode. He's got this top hat kind of thing that kind of like, I'm like, nice touch. Never in the book, but it works.
It does.
It does work with the suit and the outfit. And he's basically like the Barker. You know what I mean? He's like, you know, come one, come all, you know, enjoy the show. And it turns out it's Swamp Fight Club. You know, it's Underground Swamp Fight Club. But it's, you know, weapons, too. So, and the first fight, it's Cassidy versus the perv teacher who's been down there forever, who can't grow a beard in the dark, I guess.
But they did give him a chainsaw.
Well, because he's only got one eye. So Cassidy gets like a mace, like a shitty homemade mace, spikes on a stick, basically. And the old one eye gets a chainsaw, which I thought they were going to play for a couple of jokes, maybe when we come back to it. But just that, like, he's swinging, like he can't really see. His depth perception is off or something. You know, keeps missing.
I just imagine Cassidy just has to stand there and wait for him to cut off his own arm or leg.
Yeah, right. But that basically kind of runs down the episode in the broad strokes. But one of the things that we'll do is we'll go into the Twitterverse and we'll look into some of those real quick. I had put up before this episode, before we recorded, I put up a tweet ski, and it was, you know, what you thinking? Tell us what you're thinking. And so let me just refresh it, make sure I didn't miss anybody. So, yeah, let's see here. Yeah, my question was, we're recording tonight. Any questions, comments, thoughts, opinions, ideas, complaints, yada, 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 etc., etc., etc. And we got two people. So Alex Jameson says, I'm pretty much preferring the Jesse we're getting in this season, much more sympathetic. It made so by focusing on how much he cares for Tulip and Cassidy. What do you guys think? And I know that's what they're doing. Like Jesse's supposed to be like kind of, as far as they go, like really concerned with like, you guys just need to stay away from these people. They're really fucked up. They're really evil. But outside of him saying it to them like once an episode, kind of like, I'm not buying at what level he's like, you know, I'm not seeing it enough or to the depth where like I'm feeling that that's really on his mind at all times. But I get the idea too that like he's kind of scatterbrained right now while he's there. Yeah, because he's constantly, it seems, I do agree that he's constantly trying to figure out how are we going to get out of this, especially once these things kind of pop up and start throwing him for a loop. What are your thoughts?
I just feel like there's a part of Jesse that we're missing, because Jesse was the one with the mission in the books, and he was in this mission, but he knew he couldn't do it alone, so he was going to, you know, reach out and try and broker peace between the two of them, Tulip and Cass, in order to get on his mission and just keep going forward with it.
Right.
And I feel like we've just kind of stalled out at this point a little bit. Like, I know we moved the story a little bit, but for Jessie, we stalled out after last week. Now we know, and because of the way Hairstar is treating Jessie's soul, and it's like, I'm going to keep him in his own personal hell for a while. We know there is no mission at this point. We know it's not going to progress until Jessie gets his soul back. Jessie doesn't know that. He can still seek out the Grail, and Tulip doesn't know that. She can still seek out the Grail, but some of this is just posturing. I don't know if it's the real TV Jessie. So I'm not convinced of it yet.
Well, this is also like a little bit of like my overall kind of, again, like they're slow playing a lot of stuff. And I wonder if one of their overall like series long kind of things is to start Jessie in this kind of very questionable, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a handle on it. I don't always have like the cocksure attitude. And then like slowly was supposed to like, you know, in season 4 or 5, like have like the fucking cowboy ass kicking Jessie through and through constantly. That's in the book on page 1. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Jesse's a man full of doubts, even in the book, but he's got like, you know, still got some cocksure attitude. Like Jesse in the book, like you don't doubt for a second that like any chance he gets, he's gonna fucking kill Jody. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're definitely making it questionable.
But in the show, it feels like a thing where it's like, oh, this is the guy that killed your dad. I thought you'd have more trouble sitting next to him going to the store and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, we're going to get there. And they kind of teased it in this episode where they're like, I'm going to get him soon. Like, one of these days. Eerie music in the background. Like, you know. So, you know, there is a confirmation that we are getting the lighter.
Fuck communism.
Season. Yeah, the fuck communism lighter. More apropos maybe than ever. In the cultural aspect.
That lighter's going to sell out. If you see an official one and you really want it, keep an eye out now. There's no way it's going to be anything other than a limited run.
Yeah, if it even says it perfectly. Like I think Dave Blass or somebody on the set made some, like, for people on set, and they made some samples during the run-up, you know what I mean, last year, just for shits and giggles, and how are we going to get this on TV? What's the right look for it? So there's a couple of different versions of how they knock out the U a little bit, how they kind of scuff it up or make it look older somehow. So so, you know, it'll be interesting to see if they actually... But people have already made them for themselves. Like, there's people out there who have them. Like, you just get a gold Zippo, a brass Zippo, and just have it engraved. You know what I mean? Yeah, so we're going to get that. And I guess we could talk about the preview a little bit. Well, let me go back to let me finish up the tweets. I got one more. And it kind of echoes something we were saying a little bit earlier. It's from somebody... let's see here what this person's real name is, because I can only see their handle. From Michael DeSolis. He says, I honestly like the idea of Grandma being a voodoo witch doctor more, as opposed to a Christian cultist. Both are good, but in my opinion, the TV show wins in this department. And it kind of echoes the thing we were saying before about how, like, you know, the book doesn't really give you a lot. Grandma's kind of got like a shady deal with God in the book. And you just kind of, that's about it. That's like literally, like, you don't see them do much else, you know, or anything about their magic or mysticism. It's I don't even really think it's hinted at too much. Only vaguely that like, Grandma's like much older than she's supposed to be. Like, you know, it's alluded that she's like, you know, really old.
You know what? I will say Tulip getting captured, I think, gives us the in for that info dump on Grandma. Because I feel like that's probably where it's going to happen. It's going to be next week, and she's going to be like, they're going to press Tulip for information, but equally because they may or may not have an idea of how much Tulip knows, Tulip's going to push back. So maybe just for the benefit of us, the viewers, Tulip will learn, oh, she's like 543 years old or whatever, and we'll know that. But
Right.
I feel like that's an info dump we'll get with Tulip
At the Boyds.
at the Boyds.
Yeah, that makes sense. That she'll get some kind of grandma backstory kind of information, the stuff that Jesse's kind of holding back. And this way, maybe when she reunites with Jesse, it'll be like, "Why didn't you tell me they were like that?" And he's like, "I've been trying to tell you." And it's like, "Well, you weren't giving me details, Jesse." All right, so that's basically how their entire relationship goes. I wasn't keeping secrets. It's like, yes, you were. Like, that's how this whole show runs. It's like conveniently omitted details. Yeah, so I agree. Hey, this whole voodoo thing, it's just as far as like magic or spirituality goes and bringing that stuff in, obviously it's easier fit than them just being very Jesus obsessed. You know what I mean? And her being like just obsessed with Jesse becoming a priest. The whole backstory for him wanting to be a priest now is something else.
Yeah, I think my only issue with it is I hope we don't spend too much time with the voodoo, because we already know that there's souls, a soul exchange of some kind. And I feel like that was enough of something different from the books as far as it being like a full exchange, and now there's competition and there's rival factions, and where do you get your, I just don't want the voodoo to kind of keep us from moving the story forward. Like if I only get half an episode with Cassidy and his backstory with those other vampires because we're doing too much voodoo, I'll be upset. You know what I mean? Like, there are some other things that they do have in play. As much as I like the voodoo because it fleshes out the story a little bit more, I don't want too much of it because there is still so much else on the table right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's the weird dynamic is that the producers always said, like, oh, like, the book moves so fast that, like, we want to kind of slow some of it down. But meanwhile, it's like, well, you're only getting 10 episodes a season, and you're filling it with other stuff. Like, you're lucky to fit it all in anyway. Like, if it's a 10-episode season, I wouldn't mind it moving at a breakneck pace, but hey, whatever. It's starting to line up better. And speaking of which, I mean, unless you have something else from the tweetosphere.
No, the only other thing that was left was what I tweeted at the end of the episode, which kind of ties us into where we're going, was, where's Eugene? Because we saw Eugene in the teaser for this week, but we didn't get him, and we're clearly going to hell next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, looking through the episode titles, if you've read the book, there's a couple of reveals there. One of the episodes coming down a little further out is titled Hitler, but I don't think we're going to be waiting that long to see Eugene and Hitler. One of the things Dom pointed out in our tweet exchange today was that, not for nothing, but right now it kind of feels like the book. It's the most it's felt like the book, even though the Angelville stuff is like, half new. At least the tone of it, right? The overall tone. But once Hitler and Arseface come back, it's like, there goes the campiness. It's going to pop up through the roof. Here comes the silliness. And I'm like, wow, you're kind of right. Like, at least for sure with Hitler, it's like, what hijinks is he going to get into, And
you know what? To be fair, all we're looking for is, how does Hitler help Eugene put on black leather, put on a black helmet, and get on a bike and ride down the road, and then run into Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy? How does Hitler make that happen? At least from a book standpoint, that's all we're looking for.
Like, what I'm thinking now is, like, what is the overall plan, the arc that they have in mind for Hitler? Like, was it a thing where it's like, well, if we bring him to the surface, if we bring him back to Earth, like, where do we fit him? Where does his story end? Like, do they even have an idea for him? Like, are they gonna do a flip or like do one of their remixes where it's like he does something that somebody else does in the book, or something happens to him that happens to somebody else in the book?
I know where you're
are
going.
they gonna pull the Hoover and the Beach with him instead?
Yeah, I was gonna say I know where you're going. I think that they're using Hitler as a way to fill out some of the Grail storyline. Because if Hitler's back, we need a Messiah even more. And it'll put more pressure from the higher-ups above Star to really push back to Jesse. In fact, that could be how Jesse gets his soul back. Because Star will have so much pressure to get that next Messiah going before it's Humperdoo that he's going to have to seek Jesse out and give him back Genesis, and we can start moving forward.
I do wonder, like, because what happens when Air Star, like, what does Air Star think of Hitler? Like, you know what I mean? Because they're both German, and I'm sure, like, you know, in the world history scheme of things, Air Star's got some weird spins on world history, I bet. Like, some, you know, because he's so, like I am bigger than the big picture type of dude.
I could buy that.
Like, would he bring Hitler into the fold, or would he want Hitler dead because, oh, I don't need this problem? This is going to fuck up all my plans.
You know what?
This guy was a fuck up the first time.
You know what? You know what it is?
It's an interesting question.
Jesse Star gives Jesse back his soul so he can get Genesis. And then Jesse taking out Hitler is the staged kindergarten classroom thing from the books that galvanizes him to the media. Because remember, they set it up at one point where Jesse would save a classroom?
Well, they did. They did. Yeah, right. They did that last season.
I feel like we could see it again because it never really got released as far as like the savior is here. Look,
right?
He's
right.
taking. So I feel like it could easily be just on a grander scale, and we're just gonna reuse it because, well, we need to get at a certain point we have to get rid of Hitler to really move on with the story. Like you can't just have him out there indefinitely.
Yeah, like once Arseface like joins up with them. Like it's a quad. It's not a quintet.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like he's got to go by that point. You know what I mean? Once it becomes kind of like the four of them for a while, and Arseface really becomes like a main character if they're gonna follow how it runs in the book, then there's no room for him. And I really feel like, I wonder if the final plan with, Jesse. Hitler is tied to Air Star. But going back to the preview for next week, in this whole, I return to it again. I need a name for that theory, the slow play theory, and the remix aspect, which is the thing I've started thinking about the show as. It's more of a remix of the books, where it's like whereas the books do this here, we're going to do it over there a little later. You know what I mean? So, like, one of the things Sam Catlin said is, like, you know, we kind of want to work up to, you know, the big super crazy shit. Like, the book kind of just throws you angels and demons, angels and the devil right away. And like, you can get away with that differently than, like, a show can in a way, which I disagree with, but whatever. Like, whatever the foundation you lay in the fucking first episode just sets, you know, you could do anything from there. Anyway, but... So here we are now. The one thing that was missing from the Santa Killer's origin was meeting Lucifer, Satan himself, and his interaction and how that storyline plays out. And now I think we're going to get the version of it like that ties into the current storyline. Like that's how they're going to do it. Like Santa Killer's his return to hell, and part of his way out will be having a little confrontation maybe with the big horned bastard.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, let's not. Yeah,
Because it looks like a thing where, like, at the very least, they're giving Satan a little bit of personality.
I wonder how much, and I know that for anyone watching TV, I'll keep this as spoiler free as possible. I wonder how much of the book we're going to get now versus, hey, Hitler's out, Santa Killers, you go get him, and then we'll get that confrontation afterwards.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how much Santa Killer... Like, I feel like the Santa Killers thing is, like, going to be, like, a thing where it's like, we'll see a little bit of it, but it'll be a thing where, like, end of the season, he'll get out, be back on the road, and it'll just be like, okay, they're all done with Grandma. It's like a reset a little bit. They're back on their journey. They're back on the road trip, and Santa Killers is out of hell, and he's back on Earth. They just don't know it yet. And so you know that that's looming for season 4 kind of a thing. Because if it's all about, like, it's like this balance of time, how much screen time we can give to everything, right? So it's like, well, if we only need so much for Santa Killers, we can do, like, a little bit here in this episode, a little bit there in that episode. In between that, we do a little bit with Our Space, a little bit with Hitler. Slows down how much time we got to spend. Like, you know, it's all about, you know, 10 episodes and how do we structure it so... you know, the reveals are stacked and it's all coordinated right. But yeah, I worry, because when you bring up the motorcycle for Our Space, that Hitler's going to be on the back with a yellow helmet, you know, and some kind of goofy kind of jacket.
Well, I will say this, and I will, as we bring this to a wrap, we spent the last 20 minutes prophesizing potential theories for what could happen for the rest of this season and beyond. So, for anyone listening, by all means, send us an email and let us know if you agree or disagree. And by all means, wait until after the next episode so you could be one episode smarter in your theory than we were tonight.
Yeah, well, hey, you know, we'll take emails anytime you send them. But if people are looking for a little bit of more info, there's an article on comicbook.com where Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg reveal why changes from the comics were made for season 3, and it's the kind of stuff we kind of covered a little bit, the kind of stuff you figured. But they kind of verbalize it. So if you want to hear from the horse's mouth and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, the changes to Jody and stuff like that, the actor who plays Jody, people should know, actually read the series back in the 90s and was a massive fan of it the whole time. And he's had a few instances where he's gotten to, you know, vocalize that and talk, and you can tell he really did. And so even he'll be the first to admit that, yeah, you know, the stuff with Christina is not in the book, you know what I mean? But, you know, it's great. It works like this because blah 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 blah. So you can check that out. And if people are looking for more info stuff, to check out the Reddit page. But other than that, I agree with Agent Palmer. Send us some emails. Send them to pvp@wickedtheory.com. You can follow Agent Palmer @Agent Palmer on Twitter. You can follow. You can go read some of his writings, some of his posts, some of his bloggery over at agentpalmer.com. And on that too, if you like him, you want to hear more of him, he's got a page over there called Proxycast that lists all of his guest appearances on thousands and thousands of podcasts,
Hundreds.
or maybe 101 or 2,
yeah,
something like that. And yeah, come back next week. We'll be here breaking it down. So until the end of the world, good night, pilgrims.
Good night.